Thank you, Tanya. Last year we had our 20th anniversary, and the company decided to send out commemorative shirts to employees. They set up a website on Squarespace for us to order our swag. While we're based in New York City, we have offices around the world. Yeah. Hello. But better? Okay. One in New York, one in Ireland, one in Chicago, and one in Portugal. If you're at the New York office, you could navigate to the order form, put the office address in the form, hit submit, and get your swag. Same deal if you're in Chicago. This form works just as well with the Chicago address as the New York address. The problem started for Ireland and Portugal. Let's use Portugal. If you're an employee out of our Portugal office, you had problems ordering your swag because this form became confusing. Let's order swag to the Portugal office. First, you enter your street. Things are going well. The city, Aveiro, also works well. But what do you put for state? There's no states in Portugal, so that's confusing. Let's leave that blank. Enter in your postal code, finally your country, and you submit the form. It doesn't work. The form shows an error indicating that state/province is missing. And this problem wasn't limited to employees ordering swag. This problem existed for all customers using the form block, which begs the question, what is the form block? A website you create on Squarespace is composed of blocks, and you can add and arrange different types of blocks to display content on your site. The form block is arguably one of our most important blocks. It allows site owners, Squarespace users who create websites and online stores, to communicate to site visitors, the people who visit these websites. As a member of the international engineering team, we wanted to ensure that customers globally could use this block, and that meant upgrading its fields to be correctly localized to international formats and addresses. And localizing the form block was hard for a lot of technical reasons. There are millions of live customer sites. The form block is critical to customer workflows. The rendering layer for the form block was very old and untouched. We were changing that rendering layer and introducing React. There are many different types of fields and configurations for a form, like contact forms, booking forms, order forms. I'm not here to get into technical details about these challenges because the main challenge of this project wasn't technical, it was existential. And the existential question we were confronted with several times was this: do we do the right thing, the correct engineering decision, or do we do things right, the best decision for users? And this question is what I ultimately want to talk about. Just to introduce myself, my name is Eva Liou, and I'm a staff engineer on the international team at Squarespace. If you haven't heard of Squarespace, we're a design-driven platform helping entrepreneurs build brands and businesses online. We offer websites, domains, e-commerce tools, marketing tools, and scheduling capabilities to build a beautiful and impactful online presence. As engineers, we want to do things right. By right, I mean in accordance to best practices with maintainability in mind. And in rewriting the form block, we got to follow a lot of these principles to solve a really hard technical problem. We fixed the customer problem, which was that you couldn't input a localized address. We did our due diligence and set up performance monitoring. We improved accessibility. We got to rewrite a legacy rendering system to use modern technologies and best practices. We added unit tests and integration tests and documentation. It was a lot of work over the span of several months, but we felt good about these improvements. Another thing we did right was we ensured we followed international standards for localization. There are various standards bodies and open source libraries that govern and maintain specifications on how to format different types of localized data. They publish data files that define standard formatting that the world will agree on. And as engineers, we thought as long as we followed these specifications, customers would be happy. So we incorporated these specifications and we were dev complete, and we figured we were almost done. And then we talked to customers. We have an amazing group of power users known as Squarespace Circle. Circle is a community of creators, designers, and developers who build sites for themselves and their customers. What's amazing about having access to this group of users is we often ask them for feedback for product changes before rolling them out to a wider audience. We took their feedback for more than a month, and it was informative in ways I didn't expect. It also showed me that we could try to do everything right and still be totally wrong. One thing we got wrong was phone number formats. If you're from the US like me, maybe you don't think about the different parts to a phone number. There's a country code, an area code, the first 3 digits are called a telephone prefix, and the last 4 digits are called a line number. In our old form block, we made the assumption that all numbers were US numbers. Country code, 3 digits, 4 digits. It's a well-meaning but incorrect US-centric bias. In the UK, these are all valid phone number formats. If you look closely, you'll see some differences. Group of 2 followed by 4 followed by 4, group of 3 followed by 3 followed by 4, a group of 4 followed by 6. Even in the UK, a single country, there's variability in digit numbers. So, this US-centric form block doesn't work. The parts of a phone number outside the US don't always match the US format. In fact, this UK phone number doesn't even fit. There's nowhere to enter the trailing 2. So, what can we do as engineers to account for this difference? One option is to remove all the groupings. That way you don't have to worry about the spacing at all. Turns out customers hated it, visually it's not great, and based on more customer feedback, there's even more nuance to phone numbers in practice that isn't captured by specifications. For example, Plymouth is a port city in southwest England. According to the specification, the area code for Plymouth is 1752. This feels straightforward. But when you talk to customers in practice, a lot of people add a leading 0 to the area code of Plymouth. This leading 0 is not in the spec, and customers gave us that feedback directly. But why this distinction? When you're calling the UK, you don't add a leading 0, but when you're calling from within the UK, you do add a leading 0. And that was both unexpected and not in the spec. We only knew this because customers told us directly. And this was the first existential crisis. What do you do when the spec and customer desires are in conflict? We decided on a customer-centric compromise. Our product team determined the most common format for each country by asking local people and also seeing what other major services use. And that's the format we went with in the product. And because valid phone number lengths varied, we allowed users to tack on any number of digits to the last digit group. And finally, we thought we were ready to go to production. The product needs, while nuanced, were finally satisfied. There was another piece of feedback that got significant traction that we didn't expect. Customers were delighted by our changes. They loved the localization, visual, and accessibility improvements. They did hate one change. We changed the CSS class names. If you're not familiar with CSS, this is what it typically looks like. Property names that you can prescribe style to on HTML elements. And this is what the CSS class names looked like on the old form block before our updates. But many modern build changes don't persist these names. Instead, they mangle them for various reasons, including web performance. After our rewrite, because we were upgrading this technology and using modern tooling, class names were generated, and they ultimately get minified before deployment to production. Everything seems good so far, standard modern front-end practices. What we didn't expect was how upset customers were going to be about changing these CSS class names. Turns out they had a bunch of their own custom CSS and JavaScript that relied on the old class names. And when we changed those CSS class names, all of that functionality broke, which posed an interesting existential question. Are our CSS class names a public API that we support? No. And do we, as engineers, have the right to change those class names for the purposes of improving the code base and product? Yes. But let me add a third question. Is it our responsibility to advocate for our customers' needs when they're at odds with principled engineering decisions? Also, yes. And we decided that we couldn't just break all those sites, and we came to a compromise. We added some CSS class names back solely for the purposes of class parity. They didn't do anything. We didn't prescribe any styling to them, but it was the right thing to do. And that felt fair to everyone. We were still upgrading the platform and pushing forward a technical evolution, but we were hearing the concerns of our users and taking into account the real risk to them. While adding in those old class names back wasn't technically correct, it felt right on behalf of our users. Finally, on May 4th, the new localized form block went live on millions of Squarespace sites without further incident. And if you look closely at the slide, you'll notice you can fully enter an address in Portugal. This is a shortened version of the journey to ship localized forms, but this project was very complex. It was a large and risky change that took almost a year all in all. Some takeaways from this project are building correct scalable systems is in itself difficult. It's our nature and mandate as staff engineers to drive towards outcomes that are robust. It's our job to push back against taking on tech debt in the interest of shipping fast. It's our job to find and call out brittleness and maintainability concerns. It's our job to get people to care about doing the right thing. But at the end of the day, is it about correctness for correctness' sake or serving the needs of your users? You may face situations where you'll be at the crossroads of the proper engineering thing and the thing that advocates most for users. If you can't find a compromise in the moment, choose the users. Doing the right thing is more important than doing things right. Thank you.